Sometimes the biggest mistake a person makes happens before they even learn someone's name. The lobby of the Westbrook Police Department buzzed with the restless energy of a Monday morning as officers hurried across polished floors carrying fresh case files and paper coffee cups. The air filled with quiet conversations about the arrival of a new police chief whose identity had been kept unusually private until the official ceremony later that morning. Sunlight spilled through the tall glass entrance, painting long reflections across the badge display mounted beside the reception desk. Officer Ethan Brooks stood proudly near the security checkpoint, his brand-new uniform perfectly pressed, every button gleaming, every crease sharp enough to reflect the overhead lights. It was his very first day wearing the badge he had dreamed about since childhood, and he believed he already knew exactly what a police officer should look like, who belonged inside the building, and who did not. That confidence, built on assumptions instead of experience, quietly shaped every decision he was about to make. The revolving doors turned once more, and a woman stepped inside wearing a simple navy blazer, dark slacks, and carrying a worn leather portfolio instead of anything that suggested rank or authority. Angela Carter moved with calm confidence, offering a polite smile to the receptionist before glancing around the lobby as though taking in every detail without drawing attention to herself. She didn't announce who she was. She didn't ask for special treatment. She simply waited, patient and composed, as employees crossed the room preparing for the morning briefing. Ethan noticed her immediately. His eyes lingered just a moment too long before he walked toward her with the certainty of someone convinced he was protecting the building from an outsider. Around them, conversations softened. A few veteran officers exchanged uncertain looks, sensing tension before a single word had fully landed. Angela met Ethan's gaze with remarkable calm, her expression unreadable, almost curious, as if she had encountered moments like this before. Ethan questioned why she was there, his voice growing firmer each time. She answered politely that she had business inside the department. The exchange drew more attention with every passing second. Officers paused near the hallway entrance. Dispatchers glanced over computer monitors. Even the receptionist stopped typing. Then, in one impulsive moment driven by misplaced certainty instead of careful judgment, Ethan reacted in a way that instantly silenced the room. Time seemed to freeze. Coffee cups remained suspended halfway to waiting hands. Conversations disappeared. Every face turned toward the lobby. Angela never raised her voice. She never argued. She simply looked directly at Ethan, steady and composed, while the weight of stunned silence settled across the entire station. Somewhere beyond the front entrance, the sound of multiple vehicles arriving echoed through the parking lot. A patrol captain straightened his uniform. A city official stepped out of a black sedan. No one in the lobby realized that within minutes the meaning of that silence would change forever, and the officer who believed he understood authority was about to discover that true leadership never needs to announce itself before it is recognized. 6 hours earlier, the city had awakened beneath a pale autumn sky, and Westbrook carried the familiar rhythm of another workweek as commuters filled downtown streets and patrol cars rolled quietly through neighborhoods preparing for the morning shift. Inside police headquarters, however, the atmosphere was different. Every hallway seemed charged with quiet anticipation because by noon the department would officially welcome its new leader, although almost no one below the rank of captain knew exactly who that person was. The decision had been kept unusually confidential after weeks of speculation, and rumors drifted through every office like whispers carried on the air. Some believed the city council had recruited a decorated commander from Chicago. Others insisted a federal investigator had accepted the position. No one expected the answer to arrive without ceremony. Across town, Officer Ethan Brooks stood in front of the mirror of his small apartment, adjusting the collar of his freshly pressed uniform for what felt like the 10th time. Every polished button reflected the early morning light, and every movement revealed the excitement of someone convinced his future had finally begun. His father had served as a deputy for more than 20 years, and Ethan had grown up believing that wearing a badge meant standing between order and chaos. He admired discipline, respected authority, and trusted his own instincts perhaps more than he should have. Before leaving home, he studied himself one last time, quietly repeating the promise he had made at the academy that he would never hesitate when he believed something was wrong. Confidence filled every step as he walked into headquarters. unaware that confidence without humility could become its own blind spot. At nearly the same moment, several miles away, Angela Carter parked a modest gray sedan outside a neighborhood coffee shop instead of driving directly to the department. She greeted the cashier by name, accepted a simple cup of black coffee, and thanked the young employee with the same warmth she offered everyone she met. Nothing about her appearance suggested extraordinary authority. Her navy blazer was practical rather than expensive, and the leather portfolio tucked beneath her arm showed the marks of years spent carrying reports, handwritten notes, and difficult decisions. She had spent more than 2 decades earning respect through patience, professionalism, and quiet leadership, and she had learned long ago that titles meant very little if character failed to support them. As she drove toward headquarters, she watched families crossing intersections, school buses pulling away from sidewalks, and shop owners unlocking their front doors. She reminded herself that every decision made inside the department would eventually touch the lives of people like them. That responsibility mattered far more than the ceremony waiting ahead. When Angela reached the parking garage, she chose not to use the reserved entrance prepared for the incoming chief. Instead, she decided to enter through the public lobby, hoping to observe the culture of the department exactly as any ordinary visitor might experience it. She believed the first impression often revealed more truth than any prepared presentation ever could. At that very moment, Ethan received his assignment at the security desk, smiled proudly as another officer wished him luck on his first day, and stepped into position believing the biggest challenge ahead would simply be proving himself worthy of the badge. Neither of them realized their paths were only minutes away from crossing in a moment that would test far more than experience, rank, or reputation. Angela Carter stepped through the revolving doors without attracting the attention that usually followed people in positions of authority. She preferred it that way. The polished marble floor reflected the morning sunlight pouring through the glass entrance, and every quiet sound inside the lobby seemed sharper than usual, from the ringing telephones behind the reception desk to the steady rhythm of polished shoes crossing the hallway. She paused for only a second, taking in the photographs displayed along the wall that honored decades of officers who had served the city. Some faces smiled proudly. Others carried expressions shaped by years of responsibility. Angela believed every badge represented a promise rather than a privilege, and she wondered how many of those promises had truly been kept. She thanked the receptionist with a warm smile after signing the visitor log, never mentioning her name beyond what was required. The receptionist returned the smile, without realizing she was speaking to the woman whose portrait would soon hang alongside the department's leadership. Angela appreciated moments like this because they revealed how people treated others before titles entered the conversation. She carried herself with quiet confidence developed over 24 years of public service, beginning as a patrol officer, later leading homicide investigations, and eventually overseeing complex statewide reform initiatives. Every promotion had come through long hours, difficult choices, and the trust of communities that had once viewed law enforcement with understandable skepticism. She never forgot those conversations. They reminded her that respect could never be demanded. It had to be earned every single day. As she walked farther into the lobby, she noticed small details that many people ignored. One officer held the door open for an elderly visitor without hesitation. Another patiently helped a young mother locate the records office. Yet in another corner of the room, 2 employees stopped talking the moment a maintenance worker walked past, offering barely a glance in return. Tiny moments often revealed the true culture of an organization far more clearly than polished speeches ever could. Angela made quiet mental notes, not because she wanted to criticize, but because she wanted to understand. Leadership began with observation before action. Near the security desk, Officer Ethan Brooks stood with perfect posture, eager to demonstrate confidence on his first assignment. His academy instructors had praised his determination, and his training record showed strong physical performance and quick decision-making. What no evaluation had fully measured was how quickly assumptions could influence judgment. Ethan noticed Angela approaching with her portfolio tucked beneath one arm and immediately searched his memory for every staff photograph shown during orientation. He did not recognize her face. Instead of wondering whether he lacked information, he convinced himself that his first impression must already be correct. Angela saw the young officer studying her with unusual intensity, but she remained composed. She had encountered uncertain expressions before from people who measured authority by appearance instead of conduct. Rather than becoming defensive, she slowed her pace and offered the same courteous smile she had given everyone else that morning. Imagine standing there knowing exactly who you are while realizing someone else has already decided who they believe you must be. It is a strange feeling, not because it changes your worth, but because it quietly reveals the distance between perception and truth. Angela understood that distance better than most. She also understood that the next few minutes would reveal far more about the department than any briefing prepared upstairs ever could. Officer Ethan Brooks took a single step forward until he stood directly in Angela Carter's path, the confidence in his posture growing stronger with every passing second because he believed he was doing exactly what the badge required. Around them, the lobby continued moving, yet the pace seemed slower now as nearby employees quietly noticed the exchange beginning to unfold. Ethan spoke in a firm, official tone and asked for identification along with the reason for her visit. Angela answered without hesitation, calmly explaining that she had business inside the building and would be meeting with department leadership. Her voice remained steady, polite, and remarkably relaxed, the kind of calm that often comes from experience rather than certainty about the outcome. Ethan listened, but he did not truly hear her. Instead, he focused on the fact that she was not wearing a uniform and that he did not recognize her face from orientation. In his mind, those details became proof that his suspicion was justified. Angela reached into her portfolio with slow, deliberate movements, intending to present the documentation she had been carrying since leaving City Hall that morning. But before she could finish, Ethan interrupted and instructed her to stop. Several officers walking toward the elevators slowed their pace, exchanging uncertain glances without saying a word. The receptionist looked up from her computer, sensing that something about the conversation no longer felt routine. Angela lowered her hand immediately and nodded with complete cooperation. She did not challenge his authority. She did not raise her voice. She simply asked whether there was another way she could verify her appointment. Her patience only seemed to convince Ethan that he needed to appear even more decisive. It was his first assignment, his first opportunity to demonstrate confidence before experienced officers, and he believed hesitation would be interpreted as weakness. Imagine standing there, answering every question respectfully, knowing you have done nothing wrong, while realizing the other person has already reached a conclusion before hearing your explanation. Angela had lived through moments like that before, and although disappointment briefly crossed her eyes, it disappeared almost as quickly as it came. She understood that character often revealed itself most clearly during uncomfortable moments. Ethan asked her to remain where she was until a supervisor could arrive, repeating that procedures existed for a reason. Angela quietly agreed and waited without complaint. The silence around them grew heavier with each passing second. Veteran Sergeant Marcus Reed stopped near the hallway entrance and watched from a distance, his expression thoughtful rather than surprised. Something about the woman standing calmly in the lobby seemed strangely familiar, but before he could place her face, another call came across his radio, drawing his attention away. Outside the building, the sound of car doors closing echoed across the front entrance as several official vehicles arrived almost together. Inside the lobby, no one noticed Captain Daniel Ross stepping out of the elevator while reviewing notes for the morning ceremony. At the same moment, Mayor William Foster's security detail entered through the side corridor, moving with quiet purpose toward the conference room upstairs. The atmosphere inside the station began changing in ways Ethan could not yet recognize. He remained focused only on the woman standing before him, completely unaware that within moments every assumption guiding his decisions would be tested by a truth no academy lesson had ever prepared him to face. The silence inside the lobby became strangely deliberate, as though the building itself had begun paying attention. Officer Ethan Brooks remained standing with quiet determination, convinced that following his instincts proved he deserved the uniform he had worked so hard to earn. Angela Carter continued waiting exactly where he had instructed, her portfolio resting comfortably against her side and her expression unchanged. She did not glance toward the exit. She did not look frustrated. Instead, she calmly observed the department around her, almost as if she were learning something valuable from every passing second. Nearby, Sergeant Marcus Reed finally looked back toward the lobby after finishing his radio call, and this time recognition flickered across his face. He had attended a statewide leadership conference nearly 3 years earlier where a respected commander had delivered a keynote address about rebuilding public trust through accountability and professionalism. The woman standing near the security desk looked remarkably familiar, but before he could walk closer, another lieutenant called his name from across the hallway, pulling him away once again. Upstairs, Captain Daniel Ross reviewed the final schedule for the morning ceremony. A framed plaque waited beneath a dark blue cloth outside the conference room, ready to be unveiled after the official introduction. Staff members adjusted microphones, arranged chairs, and confirmed the arrival time of city officials. Captain Ross glanced at his watch and quietly asked whether the guest of honor had checked in yet. A department assistant replied that no one had reported seeing her. The captain frowned for only a moment before assuming traffic had caused a slight delay. Back downstairs, Ethan politely repeated that he needed Angela to remain in place until someone from command staff could verify her appointment. Angela nodded with complete cooperation and simply replied that she understood. Her calm answer unsettled one of the civilian employees watching nearby because it carried no hint of irritation, only quiet patience. Imagine knowing that a single sentence could instantly change the entire room, yet choosing not to speak because character sometimes reveals more than credentials ever could. Angela had spent years leading difficult conversations where emotions often rose before facts had a chance to speak. She knew that the truth never became stronger by arriving first. It only needed the right moment. Outside the building, another black sedan pulled into the reserved parking area. Mayor William Foster stepped out alongside 2 city officials while members of the media gathered near the front steps, preparing to cover the department's leadership transition. Inside the lobby, the receptionist received a brief telephone call, listened carefully, then looked toward the entrance with growing curiosity before quietly hanging up. She opened her mouth as though about to say something to Ethan, but another ringing phone interrupted her. Across the room, an honor guard began assembling near the main hallway in crisp dress uniforms, each officer standing perfectly still as final preparations continued. One by one, employees started drifting toward the conference room, leaving the lobby unusually quiet. Ethan interpreted the changing atmosphere as confirmation that he was maintaining proper security during an important event. What he could not see was that every passing minute was drawing the department closer to a moment that would redefine not only his first day on the job, but his understanding of respect, leadership, and the responsibility carried by every badge. The elevator doors opened with a quiet chime, and Captain Daniel Ross stepped into the lobby carrying a leather folder filled with notes for the morning ceremony. He walked briskly at first, scanning the room while speaking softly into a wireless earpiece. But after only a few steps, his pace slowed. His eyes settled on the woman standing calmly near the security desk, and for the briefest moment his expression shifted from routine concentration to unmistakable surprise. Across the lobby, Sergeant Marcus Reed noticed the captain's reaction and immediately looked back toward Angela Carter. This time there was no uncertainty. Recognition arrived all at once. The conference from years earlier, the leadership seminars, the statewide reform task force, every memory aligned with the woman patiently waiting in front of them. Yet before either officer could speak, Ethan Brooks remained focused on what he believed was proper procedure. He politely explained once again that no visitor could continue beyond the checkpoint until command staff confirmed the appointment. Angela listened with the same quiet composure that had never left her face. She offered a small nod and simply replied that she understood his responsibility. There was not a trace of anger in her voice. There was only patience. Imagine believing you are protecting an institution while unknowingly preventing the very person chosen to lead it from walking through its front door. Sometimes the greatest test of judgment comes long before anyone realizes they are being tested. Captain Ross reached the security desk and looked directly at Angela before extending his hand with genuine respect. The movement caught everyone nearby by surprise. Ethan instinctively stepped aside, assuming the captain was about to verify the visitor's identity. Instead, Captain Ross smiled warmly and said, "Good morning. We have been expecting you." The lobby became so quiet that even the distant ringing of telephones seemed unusually loud. Angela returned the handshake with calm professionalism and thanked him for the welcome. Ethan looked from one face to the other, struggling to understand why the captain appeared to know this woman so well. Before he could ask another question, the front entrance opened once more as Mayor William Foster entered the building accompanied by several city officials and members of the honor guard. The mayor walked directly across the marble floor without hesitation. As soon as he reached Angela, he smiled broadly and greeted her by name. Several employees standing nearby exchanged stunned glances while whispers quietly spread across the lobby. Ethan felt uncertainty replace confidence for the first time that morning. The mayor turned toward the gathering officers and spoke in a clear voice that carried across the entire entrance hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. It is my honor to introduce the next leader of the Westbrook Police Department. Please welcome your new chief of police, Angela Carter." For several long seconds, no one moved. The silence seemed almost impossible to break. Ethan stood completely still as every conversation around him disappeared. His eyes returned to Angela, whose calm expression had never changed from the moment she first entered the building. She had never argued. She had never demanded recognition. She had simply allowed the truth to arrive on its own. Around the lobby, officers instinctively straightened their uniforms while the honor guard came to attention. The atmosphere transformed in an instant. What had begun as an ordinary Monday morning had quietly become a lesson that no one present would ever forget, and Ethan realized that the person he had been evaluating all along had actually been evaluating the department from the moment she walked through the front doors. The weight of the mayor's announcement lingered in the lobby long after the words had been spoken. No one hurried to fill the silence, because everyone understood they had just witnessed something that would be remembered for years. Officer Ethan Brooks felt every confident assumption from the past hour quietly unravel inside his mind. He looked toward Chief Angela Carter, expecting frustration or public criticism, but instead she offered nothing more than a calm, thoughtful expression that revealed neither anger nor satisfaction. Captain Daniel Ross gently invited everyone toward the conference room for the official ceremony. Yet before anyone moved, Angela spoke in a steady voice that immediately drew every eye back to her. She thanked the mayor for the introduction and then turned toward Ethan with the same professionalism she had displayed from the moment she entered the building. She did not ask for an apology. She did not question his intentions in front of the assembled staff. Instead, she asked Captain Ross one simple question. "Is the security system already recording this morning's activity?" The captain answered that every public area inside headquarters was continuously monitored. Angela nodded once, then replied, "Please preserve the footage from the moment I entered the building until now. I would like to review it later as part of my orientation." The request sounded almost routine, yet everyone understood it carried a deeper purpose. Imagine expecting a storm, but being met with complete composure instead. Sometimes quiet accountability leaves a stronger impression than loud confrontation because it gives every person room to examine their own choices. Ethan lowered his eyes for a brief moment as the reality of the morning settled over him. He realized that throughout the entire encounter, Angela had remained cooperative, respectful, and patient despite every opportunity to reveal her identity immediately. She had allowed the situation to unfold naturally because she wanted to understand how the department treated someone before rank or title entered the conversation. As officers slowly gathered around the conference room entrance, whispers spread through the hallway, but they were no longer about the identity of the new chief. Instead, they centered on what her first decision as leader might be. Some expected immediate disciplinary action. Others anticipated a formal lecture. Angela surprised everyone once again. She addressed the assembled officers by saying that leadership began with facts rather than assumptions, and that every conclusion deserved to be built upon evidence instead of emotion. Her words were neither harsh nor forgiving. They were simply clear. Captain Ross noticed several younger officers quietly reflecting on the morning's events, while Sergeant Marcus Reed recognized something he had admired years earlier during that leadership conference. Angela possessed the rare ability to transform uncomfortable moments into opportunities for growth without humiliating anyone involved. Ethan remained silent, listening more carefully than he had at any point since putting on his uniform that morning. For the first time, he understood that authority did not come from speaking the loudest or acting the fastest. It came from exercising sound judgment with fairness, patience, and respect. As the department prepared for the official ceremony upstairs, the lesson had already begun long before anyone entered the conference room, and every person who had stood in that lobby now carried the responsibility of deciding what kind of officer they truly wanted to become. The official ceremony ended with applause, photographs, and carefully prepared remarks, but Chief Angela Carter understood that real leadership would never be measured by speeches delivered behind a podium. It would be measured by the decisions made after the cameras stopped recording. Later that afternoon, she sat inside her new office with Captain Daniel Ross, Sergeant Marcus Reed, and Commander Rebecca Hayes from Internal Affairs. The security footage from the lobby played quietly across a large monitor. No one interrupted. No one rushed to explain what had happened. Angela watched every minute from the moment she entered the building until the mayor introduced her before the entire department. She paid attention not only to Officer Ethan Brooks, but also to every person who had witnessed the encounter. She noticed the receptionist who remained courteous throughout the exchange. She noticed the veteran officers who hesitated because they were uncertain how to respond. She noticed the supervisors who were slow to recognize a situation that should have drawn immediate attention. When the recording ended, the room remained silent for several long seconds. Finally, Angela closed the folder resting in front of her and spoke with the calm confidence that had already become familiar to everyone around the table. She explained that the recording revealed something much larger than the actions of one rookie officer. It revealed a culture where assumptions could quietly influence judgment before facts had been gathered. She reminded the command staff that organizations rarely fail because of one dramatic mistake. They fail when small habits remain unchallenged for years until everyone begins accepting them as normal. Commander Hayes agreed that the footage deserved a formal review, not simply to evaluate Ethan's conduct, but also to examine departmental training, supervision, and communication. Captain Ross admitted that too many employees had relied on rumors about the incoming chief instead of ensuring that every officer received accurate information before such an important day. Sergeant Reed reflected on the hesitation he had experienced in the lobby, realizing he should have trusted his instincts and spoken sooner when something felt wrong. Angela listened carefully to every observation before outlining her first initiative as chief. Beginning immediately, every employee from the newest recruit to the most senior commander would participate in renewed training focused on professional judgment, respectful communication, procedural fairness, and community trust. Performance evaluations would include not only arrests, reports, and response times, but also the ability to demonstrate dignity, patience, and impartial treatment toward every person entering the department. She emphasized that accountability was never intended to humiliate people. Its purpose was to strengthen public confidence by ensuring that everyone learned from mistakes rather than hiding them. Meanwhile, Ethan Brooks waited quietly outside the office after being asked to remain available for a meeting later that day. Every minute seemed longer than the last as he replayed the morning repeatedly in his mind. He realized that no handbook had instructed him to make assumptions. That choice had been entirely his own. Looking through the hallway window toward the busy lobby, he noticed families visiting the records division, senior citizens requesting assistance, and young children smiling as officers greeted them with kindness. For the first time, he truly understood that every person walking through those front doors deserved the same respect before anyone knew their story, their profession, or the title printed on their identification. Inside her office, Angela looked once more at the paused image on the monitor showing the department lobby exactly as it had appeared that morning. She quietly turned off the screen, knowing that changing a culture would require far more than correcting a single moment. It would require every officer to choose fairness over assumption every single day. The following Monday, the atmosphere inside Westbrook Police Department felt noticeably different. Nothing about the building itself had changed. The same morning sunlight streamed through the glass entrance. The same telephones rang behind the reception desk. The same officers prepared for patrol assignments and community meetings. Yet there was a new sense of purpose moving quietly through every hallway, because people had begun paying closer attention not only to the rules they enforced, but also to the way they treated the people standing in front of them. Chief Angela Carter walked through the lobby once again, dressed no differently than she had been on her first morning. This time, however, the difference was not in her appearance. It was in the eyes of those around her. Officers greeted visitors before asking questions. Employees paused long enough to listen before reaching conclusions. The change was small, almost impossible to measure on paper, but it was visible in countless ordinary moments. Officer Ethan Brooks had spent the previous week completing additional training, reviewing department policies, and participating in long conversations with senior officers about professional judgment and public trust. He had accepted responsibility for his choices without making excuses, understanding that growth could only begin when honesty replaced pride. When Chief Carter entered the lobby that morning, Ethan stepped forward with quiet confidence that looked very different from the certainty he had displayed on his first day. He greeted her respectfully, welcomed her to the building, and asked if there was anything she needed before continuing inside. Angela smiled warmly and thanked him. The exchange lasted only a few seconds, but everyone nearby understood its significance. It was not about forgetting the past. It was about demonstrating that people could learn from it. Later that afternoon, the entire department gathered in the community briefing room where Chief Carter delivered her first official address to every employee. She spoke without dramatic language or elaborate promises. Instead, she reminded them that every person who entered the department carried a story that officers might not immediately understand. Some arrived seeking help. Some arrived carrying fear. Some arrived carrying hope that the people behind the badge would treat them fairly. She explained that the public rarely remembered the exact wording of department policies, but they always remembered how an encounter made them feel. Respect, she said, was not earned after someone proved their importance. Respect was the starting point that every person deserved. The room remained completely silent as officers reflected on her words. Ethan looked around at his fellow officers and realized that the greatest lesson of his first week had not come from a classroom or a training manual. It had come from one woman who possessed every reason to respond with anger, yet chose patience instead. As the meeting ended, the officers slowly returned to their assignments with a renewed understanding of what their profession demanded. The polished badge on every uniform still represented authority, but now it also carried a clearer reminder of responsibility. Outside, families continued walking through the city streets, trusting that the people sworn to protect them would judge them by their actions rather than assumptions. And as Chief Angela Carter watched another ordinary day begin across Westbrook, she quietly reflected on a truth that would guide her leadership for years to come. A badge can open a door, but only character determines what happens after you walk through it. Because in the end, the strongest form of justice is not found in power over others. It is found in the courage to treat every person with dignity before you know who they are.